After 4 years, 4 months, and 17 days, it looks like Fortnite Mobile is about to make its very long-awaited return to the iOS App Store. This is monumental news because for one of the world's most popular games being Fortnite, an entire platform has been alienated over a lawsuit between $2 billion companies, which has left the Fortnite Mobile player base pretty much stranded and just by themselves for almost 5 years. But with Tim Sweeney tweeting this about a day ago, we will return Fortnite to the US iOS App Store next week. I mean, that's it, right? This is the end. It's over. We can finally play Fortnite Mobile on iOS again. And so with this huge news coming out of the blue, we're going to be breaking down today, why did this take so long to happen in the first place? Why is this news coming out all of a sudden with seemingly no notice? And what does this mean for the Fortnite mobile player base moving forward and just the mobile community in general? Now, we're going to be taking this one way back, even past August of 2020 when the game was initially banned off of the Apple App Store to understand why this was such a big issue in the first place. Because I don't think a lot of people properly attributed the role that Fortnite Mobile had in the success of Fortnite as a game in general. Fortnite Mobile was released to the mobile platform in early 2018. This was right around season 3 or season 4 of the first chapter in Fortnite. So basically when the game was just breaking records month after month. I mean, this is when Ninja was playing with Drake. This is when view counts and subscriber counts were reaching all-time highs. Fortnite decided to do something pretty unprecedented and bring their insanely popular PC and console game over to the mobile platform. Now, on the surface, it seems like this decision won't move the needle very much in terms of the reach of Fortnite and the Fortnite player base. And culturally, no, Fortnite Mobile really never had as big of a foothold in the ecosystem that console and PC did. But what Fortnite Mobile allowed was for gamers for the first time ever to be able to experience and interact a game they love whenever and wherever. Because typically, you're only allowed to play a game when you're at home using your Xbox, your PlayStation, or your computer. But for the first time, a AAA game, which also was cross-platform, meaning you could play on mobile with your console and PC friends, it was in your pocket. It was on the go. And so although Fortnite Mobile never really had this huge following like the PC and console side of the game did, it gave users the ability to purchase skins on the go, play games in class, play games in the car, just basically always be tapped into Fortnite whenever they wanted to be. And so fast forward 2 years in the future, Fortnite Mobile is still going strong. There's a lot of support from it, from the developers being Epic Games. And so with Fortnite Mobile now being an integral part of the ecosystem, everyone was kind of assuming that it was just going to be around. It was never going to be in the spotlight. It was never going to get the main focus of Epic Games and Fortnite as a whole, and especially with the community, but it was there. It was an ever-present part of Fortnite, allowing people to interact with the game whenever they so please. And so you can imagine the shock of me and many gamers around the world when in August of 2020, Tim Sweeney basically decided to intentionally get the game banned off of the App Store. Now, to explain this as a whole, I mean, this is why it took so long. Because in August of 2020, Tim Sweeney intentionally decided to pick a fight with a $1 trillion company being Apple. And the way in which he went about doing this was actually pretty clever. I gotta give it to him. One random update in August of 2020, Tim Sweeney decided that on the iOS versions of the game, or I guess the mobile versions of the game in general, also on Android, he would do one thing in particular. He would add a new payment button that instead of purchasing V-Bucks directly through Apple's payment processor, you click pay with Apple Pay and you double click, that's how you process payments on an iPhone typically, or on the iOS ecosystem. He decided that he was going to add a button that if you clicked it, you'd be brought to Epic Games website, in which you would not only be saving money, you'd be getting more V-Bucks. So it was incentivizing everyone to go onto mobile, buy V-Bucks, circumvent Apple's payment processing system, and then that way Epic gets more money, Apple gets way less money, and the consumer pays less, gets more V-Bucks. It was a win all around, but only for a few short hours, because behind the scenes, this update had been brewing for weeks, and Epic Games knew that this was going to cause an all-out warfare, and not just any warfare, a legal battle. This is the reason it took so long for Fortnite Mobile to come back to the iOS App Store. The legal system is incredibly slow. I mean, I've never experienced it firsthand, but just seeing this play out in person, especially the first few months of the lawsuit and the trial, it takes a long time, millions of dollars, tons of resources, tons of people, tons of time to finalize these proceedings and for the court system to do its thing. But Tim Sweeney knew this. He knew that in August of 2020, when he intentionally broke the terms of service of the Apple App Store, that it was going to result in Fortnite Mobile being permanently banned off of it, basically until the lawsuit was done. And so that's why the game was originally banned in the first place. Tim Sweeney thought that Apple was taking way too big of a cut of developers' revenue from games via their payment processing system. Because if you don't know, when you do buy V-Bucks or anything, if you spend $10 on a mobile app, the developer is only going to get $7 of those dollars, 70%. Apple as a whole is going to get 30% of that revenue for basically doing nothing. I mean, you can download the app on iOS, but Apple doesn't really do anything besides that. And so Tim Sweeney said, I'm not giving this big old cut of revenue, big old chunk of change to Apple. We're gonna make this update, bypass the terms of service, and then we're gonna settle this in court. And so all the while this is going on, the players of the Fortnite mobile community were basically abandoned. I mean, I gotta be honest. It is amazing Tim Sweeney clutched the dub. If I had to put a percentage chance that he was going to pull this out, we're talking maybe 10%, maybe 15% chance. But it seems like he's actually reached most of his goal, which we'll talk about later on, what the results of this lawsuit were. But as a result of Tim Sweeney picking this fight with Apple, the $1 trillion company, the Fortnite mobile player base was pretty much just left out to dry. That is the honest reality. As someone who was creating Fortnite mobile content full time 4 years ago, it was my job to wake up, play Fortnite mobile, post it, and earn a living. That pretty much no longer existed a few years into the ban. This was because Fortnite and Epic Games as an ecosystem decided that while the ban was going on, one, iOS, you just couldn't play it, so that was a huge revenue stream in itself. And then Android, you could still play Fortnite Mobile on Android, but it was always a much smaller subset of the community and typically produced much less revenue. So Epic Games was basically like, hey, this game's banned on iOS, we're going to focus our attention on the lawsuit and kind of just forget about mobile, because bugs started to pile up, issues, glitches, things were running rampant on mobile that we had really never seen like this before. Tournaments all of a sudden dried up. We weren't able to compete with each other anymore. We were forced to compete with console and PC players. There was no real activations, collaborations, community events. Basically, all the support mobile was used to getting for the first 2 years of the game pretty much vanished. And so as a result of this lawsuit, I know Tim Sweeney has always said this is for the consumer, this was for the players. We want Fortnite to be better because of this lawsuit. As a Fortnite mobile player and creator and someone who made my living off of this game, we couldn't have felt more abandoned in the last few years. So I had to get that out of the way, that I am very excited that Fortnite Mobile is coming back, but I don't think I can ever forgive or forget the just negligence that Fortnite had of not only the creators, but the players, the millions and millions of players, like I mentioned, who had become accustomed to being able to play Fortnite Mobile on the go, anywhere, anytime, any place, and really envelop themselves in the Fortnite ecosystem. They kind of just turned their backs on us and said, sorry, that's not our problem. That's your problem. You decided to play on mobile. So I'm really interested to see how this changes in the next coming months, because like I read off at the beginning of the video, Tim Sweeney says we will return Fortnite to the US iOS App Store next week. Now, how is this possible? I just talked about how Fortnite and Epic Games picked a legal battle with a $1 trillion tech company. Well, the reason he's able to say that is because that lawsuit just wrapped up around 24 hours ago, and it was a doozy in a good way. That's because Tim Sweeney and Fortnite, even though they were the underdogs in this court case, they were the $1 billion game development company that was fighting for the rights of the consumers. They went up swinging, throwing uppercuts, throwing jabs against the $1 trillion Apple corporation. They actually won. Now, I think this article in particular by The Verge sums up everything in the most succinct way possible and gives a very clear picture as to what just happened with the finalization of the lawsuit. The headline reads, a judge just blew up Apple's control of the App Store. The judge in the Epic v. Apple case has banned Apple from charging a commission on purchases made outside of the App Store because of its ongoing anti-competitive behavior. Now, that's literally what we were just talking about. This is the reason Fortnite was banned off of the App Store in the first place, because Tim Sweeney put a button in the Fortnite mobile app that took users outside of the app and redirected them to make payments, bypassing the Apple payment processing system, which a judge literally just found as anti-competitive, and they basically blasted him in legal court that this isn't allowed. You guys were knowingly being anti-competitive, knowingly being anti-consumer. And the article goes on to say that Epic v. Apple judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers just ruled that effective immediately, Apple is no longer allowed to collect fees on purchases made outside apps and blocks the company from restricting how developers can point users to where they can make purchases outside of the apps. Apple says it will appeal the order. The ruling was issued as a part of Epic's ongoing legal dispute against Apple and its major victory for Epic's arguments. Gonzalez Rogers also says that Apple willfully chose not to comply with her previous injunction from her original 2021 ruling. As a part of the ruling, the judge says that Apple cannot impose any commission or fee on purchases that consumers make outside an app, restrict developers' style, formatting, or placement of links for purchases outside of an app, block or limit the use of buttons or other calls to action, or interfere with consumers' choice to leave an app with anything beyond a neutral message appraising users that they are going to a third-party site. And Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney says that following this ruling, the company will be bringing back Fortnite to the US App Store next week. And he did also put forth a peace proposal, which I didn't even really talk about because it's probably not going to happen. But he says if Apple extends the court's Apple tax-free framework worldwide, then we'll return Fortnite to the App Store worldwide and drop current and future litigation on the topic. And then at the end of this article is the 80 pages of the court document that I am not going to read because I don't want to read 80 pages of a court document. But this is the reason all of a sudden we have this great news, is because finally the litigation and the court proceedings for the most part have wrapped up. I mean, Apple says they are going to rebuke this. They're going to rebuttal. They're going to file an appeal saying, no, this isn't right. But already, as of today, there are apps like Spotify instituting this. So I think Spotify on iOS, there's a new update. If you download it, you can go and you can press a button that'll redirect you to the website so you can bypass paying a higher subscription fee and instead pay a lower one for the same service on iOS products. So as of today, there are already apps and products instituting this feature, which is why Fortnite Mobile is able to return. Now, I just want to address that little bit of Tim Sweeney commentary at the end of that tweet, saying that if they do go ahead and apply this globally, then they're going to drop litigation and drop all that stuff. But being honest, that's just not going to happen. Seeing how pretty much dishonest Apple has been about this whole proceeding, there's just no way that Apple gives up and says, GG's, you guys won. They're going to continue to fight this as long as they legally can. And so although Fortnite Mobile is only being planned to be released inside of the United States, I still think that is a huge win, because the key differentiator of what happened in the EU with sideloading and what might or hopefully is going to happen inside the United States is if the game comes back to the United States, all you've got to do to get the game is to switch your app store to the US App Store. Because right now, the way that the Fortnite workaround works, if you live in the European Union, because if you didn't know, for the last 6 months or so, you've been able to play and download Fortnite Mobile if you live inside of the European Union, which is great for those folks who live in the EU, but basically anyone outside of the EU, because of how strict the regulations are and because of how clamped down Apple has been about the whole sideloading process. You don't download Fortnite on the App Store in the European Union. You have to go to Epic Games website, sideload the Epic Games Store, and then you sideload Fortnite inside of the Epic Games Store on your iPhone, never once stepping foot inside of the App Store. And so the reason Fortnite returning to the US App Store is a huge win is because for years, all we've needed to do to bypass global and regional restrictions is either make a new Apple ID or just go into your settings and switch the region of your account. Because if you say you're in the United States, well, hey, you're going to see the United States App Store. And if Fortnite Mobile, if you go into the App Store and you can just type Fortnite and download Fortnite on mobile, that is going to be it. There's basically going to be GG's. Anyone inside the US can download it, and anyone globally should be able to then make their region the US App Store or make a new Apple ID and download the game. There's no longer going to be this paywall. There's no longer going to be this restriction, this global restriction, this geolocation restriction. You should just be able, and hopefully next week, if Tim Sweeney is not lying and he's not capping, and the game does return to the iOS platform in the iOS App Store, It should be simple as that. If you live in the US, you open up the App Store, you download the game, you're gaming, you're playing for the first time in 4.5 years. If you live outside of the US, then you should just be able to switch your App Store and then still download the game, be gaming, and be playing. So that's it, gamers. I mean, that is literally it. This is what I've been covering for nearly 5 years. And truth be told, I've kind of moved on. Believe it or not, I'm actually still making content full-time on a different game, on a different channel, and things have been going great. But the reason I still kept covering Fortnite Mobile all these years later is because I don't think there's ever been anything that has truly felt the same as the Fortnite Mobile community back, 5 years ago. So I have the intention of coming back and creating content on the game if what Tim Sweeney says is true, is if there's no, hoops you have to jump through and no crazy workarounds and none of this. I'm tired of dealing with it. We're all tired of dealing with it. If you were a Fortnite Mobile player, or if you are a Fortnite Mobile player, or if you want to be a Fortnite Mobile player, the last thing we want to continue to have to deal with is these, not lies, but the back and forth, the hope, and then they just take the hope right back from you. Because the amount of times this court case has been updated and there's good news and there's bad news and it's coming back, but it's only here. I just want it to be over. So if next week Fortnite returns to the App Store inside the United States, I think we're back. I think Fortnite Mobile is basically that's as good as it's going to be in terms of returning to its former state. And so that begs the question, what next? What happens now? Because Fortnite Mobile hasn't, in my opinion, properly received the support it deserves for almost 5 years. I'm sure the game is still, it has continued to be developed for iOS, and we get the new updates and we get the new content. But as far as I'm aware, a lot of the current players are saying the optimization isn't great. Bugs and glitches are happening more frequently than they ever did before, and they're taking weeks to get fixed. Some of these are huge game-breaking bugs that should not be happening 7 years into a game's existence. And so my main question is, what is Epic Games' response going to be to this? Because there's two options. One, they can continue to do what they've done and use Fortnite Mobile as this legal platform. These Tim Sweeney is saying, we love the consumers, we love the players, this is for the players. And then all the while, the players are feeling horrible about this. We get no benefits, we reap no rewards, we can't play the game on the platform that we love and grew up playing. Or the second option, which is they actually take this win, they take this fight for the consumers and the victory that they just secured for the consumers, really of Apple products around the world, but more importantly for the Fortnite Mobile player base. I really hope that they can take this win and do something good with it. I'm not saying that means tournaments, I'm not saying that means skins, just bring back some support, make the mobile community feel like we're actually there. Because I think a lot of us have felt like we've gotten the cold shoulder over the last few years from Epic Games, and not intentionally, but just by happenstance of the game not really being prevalent. It's only available in a certain few countries, not many people even play about it, not even really people, no one talks about the game anymore. So I'm just hoping, my hope is that moving forward, that the community as a whole, one, can return to some former semblance of itself. I know obviously not everyone's going to come rushing back in, but hey, there'll be some familiar faces, some old familiar faces, hopefully some new faces decide to download the game, and really hopefully Epic Games decides to do the right thing, which is just provide somewhat of support to the community. It would be cool to see things that we haven't seen in a while, which is mobile specific tournaments. Maybe we get some cool cash cups, and maybe something comes to mobile that other platforms don't get because we were just banned for 5 freaking years. But it's all speculation, it's all mumbo jumbo, and hey, there's still a chance. I hope this doesn't happen, but because the game is not currently out, and I don't know what Apple's gonna do with the lawsuit, I don't know what they're gonna do legally, and I don't know if Tim Sweeney was just yapping, but there is still a chance until I can download the game on my phone, on my iPhone in the US without some mumbo jumbo and jumping through hoops. There's still a chance it doesn't happen, and I would be so I don't know, not even distraught. I would just be so disappointed if that's the reality. But I'm not gonna speculate one way or the other. Tim Sweeney, to his credit, for the most part, has not said anything about Fortnite that hasn't ended up coming true. He's never said the game is going to come back and that it never comes back. So I'm gonna take Mr. Sweeney up on his word and really hope that Fortnite Mobile does return next week to the iOS platform on the App Store inside of the United States. It has been years. It's literally been almost 5 years of covering this. I've probably made hundreds of videos. We've waited thousands of days for this moment to occur, and honestly, it doesn't feel real. Probably because I feel like I've made this video so many times before, like, oh, we're back, and then we're not. Oh, we're back. Like, again, until the game is on my phone, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but gamers, I just have to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sticking along through all these years, through all these videos, through all these ups and these downs, and hopefully one final up. Really, thank you guys. The only reason I continue to make these videos is because you guys keep watching. There's people out there like me who played this game years ago, and maybe as weird or as nerdy as it sounds, like there's just nothing like Fortnite mobile. I play Fortnite on PC, it sucks. I play Fortnite on console, it doesn't hit the same, but Fortnite on mobile, just something about it, man. Something about it just hits different. So I'm really excited, hopefully, to be able to play this game next week with you all, the people who have stuck around. And again, bring in some new faces, bring in some people from console and PC. We got to get the mobile community popping again next week. But with all that said, gamers, it's been your boy, DuckyTheGamer, and I'll catch you guys next week on Fortnite Mobile. Deuces.